first, briefly describe the character you play in the film and in what ways are you similar and different from the character that you play?
I play Maria Vazquez.
Okay.
She's the little sister of Bernardo Vazquez, who is the leader of the Sharks, and he's also he's like kind of famous in town for his boxing.
A great boxer.
He's a great boxer. And I think Maria loves her family so much. She loves her roots, but she's also very interested in rooting herself to other things and other people and having different associations in her life. And she's just come to Nueva York for the first time. She's been there for 4 months, and she's there because Anita convinced Bernardo to go and to let her come to Manhattan. I think Maria and I are both very emotional. We lead with our hearts, first and foremost. We lead with love, and we have a tough time trying to understand why people hate differences so much, because she focuses on similarities more than differences. But the differences are not lost on her, which I think is different from other iterations of Maria.
Yes.
Tony and Maria constantly have conversations about how they're different and how that's dangerous, but then they love each other anyways. I think that's a really beautiful thing, and I think that is a core part of my personality. And now, Ariana DeBose.
I play Anita. She is the first lady of the Sharks, the girlfriend to Bernardo, the leader of the Sharks. She is a absolute firecracker with a passion for dancing, and she has a beautiful maternal relationship, sisterly relationship with Maria. And she's sort of, I like to think of her as the glue amongst the family. The complicated glue, but she holds things together even in the face of incredible adversity, whether it's coming at her or the people that she loves. But one of the things I love about this character is she has agency and she speaks her mind. She's a woman ahead of her time, and she has beautiful ambitions to create a better life for herself and the people that she loves. And she has no qualms about going 100% towards fighting for her version of the American dream. And then, as time goes on, you see how the very dream that she is fighting for is ripped from her hands by Americans. Isn't that wild? It is a wild, wild thing. And I think that my ambition and Anita's ambition is where we are the most similar. I've never been afraid to fight for my dreams or speak my mind. And we both have a passion for dancing, and we believe in joy. I believe in joy and love above all things. And those are things that inherently make a great Anita.
How familiar were you with the stage play and the earlier film prior to being cast?
I watched the movie for the first time when I was 6 or 7 years old, and I was hooked. And I had the CDs and the records and the Arthur.
Did you have the cassette?
I did. Yeah, for sure. It was it was an integral part of my upbringing. It was Rita Moreno was the first woman I saw on screen who looked like me and who represented me, and I was so enraptured by her performance and by her as a person. She was a pioneer. We wouldn't be sitting here today without her and her leadership and her guidance. And then I played the role on stage when I was 16 years old, so I became very familiar with the source material on the musical side as well.
For myself, I was familiar with the Robbins choreography, because I'm a dancer first, or I used to say that about myself. But I fell in love with the 61 film when I was a kid, sitting crisscross applesauce in my grandmother's floor, just glued to the television, watching the woman in the purple dance, just exude joy. And then I came to know her as Rita Moreno, and she was the closest thing that I could find at the time to a role model or a woman who I thought looked like me.
Was the experience of being directed by Steven Spielberg anything like what you imagined it would be? And what, if anything, surprised you about it?
No. It wasn't what I thought it would be. Because, I think we have this idea of him in our minds because his name is on so much. You can't go watch anything without Steven being attached. Animaniacs, Shrek, like everything. He has a hand in everything. But like I said, the most intimidating thing about him is his name. And the second you meet him, he's a human, he's generous, and he loves what he does for a living. And he also cares a lot. He cared a lot about West Side Story. I didn't realize what a huge musical buff he was. That was surprising to me.
He's like a little fangirl.
He is a fangirl, and he goes to see all of the shows on Broadway. He loves to go backstage and talk to the cast.
Yeah, I first met him at Hamilton.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, thank you for coming to our little skit. And he was like, our little skit. I'll never forget it. And he had such a big smile on his face.
Yeah,
I love him.
He loves it. I mean, and that's really important when you're so deep in how much you care about something, like in the way that I care about West Side Story, the way that we care about West Side Story, and to meet your match in that way creatively, someone who cares just as much, if not more, about the source material and doing it justice, it's a really beautiful thing. And Steven's he's the best.
He's so beautifully collaborative, and I think that is what people don't realize, or perhaps he has grown to be more collaborative as his longevity in this industry lasts.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because I think I was expecting a director to say, you should do it like this, and you should do it like this, and then you should move here, and by the numbers. And instead he said, how about you just go run wild?
Yeah.
And I said, that sounds great.
Which,
to
unless
me.
it was like a technical thing or a Janusz thing,
Yeah.
it was very much like, let's do it and see where we go,
Yeah,
and
see
then
what happens.
and then we'll fine tune.
It was great.
Yeah. Would do it again.
He's great. Call us. We're down.
All right, what do you think makes this film relevant for today's audiences?
It's this timeless for a reason.
It's lived for 64 years for a reason. No one has forgotten the music or the plot for 64 years for a reason.
Well, and it speaks to lessons that we continually do not learn as a society.
Yeah, history is doomed to repeat itself. That's what the story's really about. It's like, it's one of those things where you can tell it's going to be on loop. That story is going to be on loop because in our iteration, at least, Tony talks about how he went to prison for almost beating a kid to death. And that's exactly what goes on in our film. It's just going to keep happening until they finally have a conversation and they finally meet halfway. And there's a little glimmer of hope at the end when the sharks help to carry Tony's body with the jets into Doc's drugstore and they mourn together because honestly they're really there for Maria in my opinion because she loses her mind in front of them. But it's one of those things where I think it's going to be a conversation starter and hopefully not a conversation ender, and we can...
No, this film is the beginning of a conversation. In fact, it's like a reigniting of a conversation that had been started or restarted with the 61 film.
And it's been going on. It's been going on. Not great.
But I think this film takes on so many large issues head on. It's a film that is courageous and brave in many, many ways. And like I said, it's the beginning of a conversation. It will not be the end.
Yeah, for sure.
What would you say your biggest challenge was in making this film?
I would say my biggest challenge in making this film was not letting someone else's Academy Award stress me out.
Yeah, that's real. That's real, and I always thought about that when I got to work with you. It was just like, she's a force because it's a big feat. It's a huge task, and you took it on so beautifully.
Well, and all of these characters have such a legacy,
They do.
Both the original production is beloved, and the 61 film is beloved. But that doesn't mean there's not space for new interpretations.
Indeed.
And two or three things have to be able to exist at one time.
Yes.
And
we were encouraged by Tony Kushner. Tony Kushner took on a huge feat himself. And, Arthur Laurents' script is one of the most iconic scripts in musical theater history. And
Justin
Tony Kushner
Peck
was like, no.
He was like, why don't we try this
he was
instead?
Like, you're done. And it was great.
And in the same breath, Justin Peck took on the Robbins choreography, that legacy there.
Yeah.
I will never forget, I ran into Jessica Lange at some premiere, and she was like, well, tell me about the choreography, because, I was very good friends with Jerry Robbins.
Jerry.
And I said, I'm so glad you asked. Well. ... But it is beloved. But, it is a Herculean feat to pay homage to something and then also go and recreate not recreate, but create your own language and honor the bodies and the time that you're in now, right? It has to be allowed to inform the period piece.
And Stephen allowed us to do that as well as an admirer of the Robert Wise 1961 film. He has so much respect for that film, and it will always be an iconic piece of film history.
Right.
It's a product of its time, though, and it was time for something new. Mm-hmm. And now we reintroduce that to the next generation in hopes that they, in their 64 years, will make it again and do something wonderful with it. I'm sure it'll happen. And
I hope they do.
And we're part of that legacy.
Yeah.
And that's an honor, truly.